Hey there, friends. I'm Tanner.
And I'm
And
Allie.
we're the Kalinas. And today we want to talk to you about the list with all the boxes that we sometimes have when it comes to dating.
We're interested in talking about the distinction between negotiables and non-negotiables because there's definitely like some gray areas when it comes to that topic.
And we have a lot of friends who sometimes make non-negotiables negotiables and negotiables non-negotiables. And so it's really kind of this gray thing that we want to talk to you guys about.
And probably a lot of people have a lot of opinions about this, so we will share ours.
So sometimes, and I think I've even been guilty of this in the past, we hear friends say things like, yeah, he or she checks all the boxes, or maybe, he or she checks all the boxes except for this one thing. And that language hints at something in our hearts. Whether or not these people actually have a list, and I think actually some of them do, I think I'm guilty there. I think I actually had a list. What it tells us about the heart is that we're looking at people through the lens of kind of like having a menu. We're kind of filtering people through kind of this menu checklist of sorts and kind of this dehumanizing kind of way.
Yeah, and then if someone doesn't check all your boxes, you just cast them away and move on to the next person in hopes that they might.
And so before we even dive into this, we want you to hear us say it is okay and it is good to have expectations and standards. That is a good thing that you should have. At the same time, it's not okay to have unfair expectations. It's not okay to run people through a menu and forget that they're human and that they can grow and they can change and they can transform.
And evolve. It's
evolve.
a good thing, yeah. And sometimes when we make these checklists for like what we expect in someone when we're dating them, we kind of forget that people like actually have room to grow still. So why are we telling you guys to maybe throw that list in the trash or get rid of it?
Well, 3 reasons. 1, you don't know yourself better than God. We can't make the claim that we know ourselves so well that we know exactly what we need. Only God knows that. So we can't claim to know more about ourselves than God knows about us. And so when we make a list, then we're making the claim that we know exactly what we need in a spouse.
Yeah, and we know exactly what's going to make us happy and holy, honestly. And this second thing might disappoint a lot of people out there, but the perfect person does not exist.
Oof.
That's a tough pill to swallow.
There is no one who will check all the boxes.
And that's okay. It really is. It kind of goes back to what we were saying earlier that like if we don't see people as people who change and grow and transform by the Lord, like we kind of like expect people to be perfect and nobody is perfect yet.
Which leads to the third reason, because marriage isn't designed to be this perfect thing. It's a vocation. It's messy. It's meant to sanctify us.
Right.
And so, just having this we have a new puppy and he's kind of barking down here. We'll introduce you at the end of this video, but you got to keep watching till the very end.
If you want the perfect spouse, then join a religious community because then your spouse is Jesus. But then that's kind of hard too. And it's not all sunshine and rainbows either because whenever things are going a little rough, you know that you're the problem because Jesus is perfect. But just something to think about.
And also Jesus knows you better than you know yourself. And so he knows what will actually sanctify you. And so those are kind of the 3 reasons why we propose throwing out a list altogether.
And throwing out the list does not mean lowering your standards. It does not mean like lowering your expectations when it comes to really important things like chastity, your future, all those things. It doesn't mean that. It just means like giving space to let people be people and have room to grow in their life.
And so this is an invitation for you to ask, is this actually a non-negotiable that I have? Why or why not? And I think a better question, I think the deeper question underneath that is, will not having this thing take away from my holiness? If not having this thing will indeed take away from your holiness, then it's a good chance it's a non-negotiable.
Right.
But if not having this thing won't come at the detriment of your holiness, then
it might be a negotiable.
it might just be a negotiable. And so when I was dating Allie, I had these desires that I wanted in a potential spouse, but I didn't maybe hold those as unfair expectations against Allie. There were a certain number of things that I had to let go of. For example, dating Allie, she had no savings. She had 0 savings.
I had some savings.
She had absolutely 0 savings and a good number
so
of expenses.
over-dramatized.
And a good number of expenses. And
I had 1 car payment. That's it.
And so entering into marriage, I knew that there'd be some sort of like kind of financial hardship, at least right away. That wasn't a desire that I had, and that certainly would have been on my list had I had a list. Another desire that I kind of had to negotiate in dating Allie was I like big parties. I like big groups. I like bouncing from person to person.
Tanner's a social butterfly.
I like being a social butterfly. Allie is not a social butterfly. It's
I
like,
am in small groups.
yeah, growing up, I always had, kind of the expectation or thought that my future spouse would be like me and we'd be bouncing back and forth in parties and social situations. And that was something I just kind of had to let go of in order to marry her.
And like at the end of the day, like I desire to be more social, and it just takes me a little bit to get like pushed out of my comfort zone. So where Tanner's maybe could have seen that as like a non-negotiable, like this is always going to be how it is, like there's actually room for me to grow there, which Tanner has seen.
She absolutely has grown. I'm so glad that I didn't make that a non-negotiable.
Yeah.
Or the lack of savings, because yeah, was our first year of marriage financially a little bit tight? Yeah, absolutely. But the Lord has provided for us every step of the way. And I've definitely seen Allie grow in social situations to the point where sometimes she's the one dragging me into bigger groups.
We just want to share this with you guys because we don't want you guys to think like, oh, Tanner and Allie clearly checked all each other's boxes, and so that's why it worked out for them, which is just not true. I think something for me that I always like thought I would have in a future spouse is like someone who had a very just direct, simple career path. And that is definitely not Tanner. And that's okay. But like, had I written Tanner off from the very beginning, knowing that he's just like a very creative individual and like is going to be doing a million things at once because that's just how his mind works, I would have never like stuck it out with him. And I think like that's an important thing to be like, okay, is this a non-negotiable, or is it a place that I can actually grow? Because for me, it's actually stretched me to trust in the Lord in a more radical way than I ever have, in a really good way.
Yeah.
So, and like Tanner said, the Lord has provided, and it's been really beautiful. So
Absolutely. And I think that example that Allie has, I think that is an example of a negotiable that sometimes people make a hard non-negotiable.
Right.
We've even had friends say things like, yeah, he or she hasn't proven that they can provide for themselves yet. So until that happens, I'm not proposing. I'm not getting on a knee, or I'm not saying yes, or whatever it is.
yeah, and there's a very strong difference between someone who like is trying really hard, has a desire to provide, all these different things, with someone who's like doesn't care about that and is being maybe lazy. Like there's a very strong difference between those two things.
And that
One
is
of them's
another video.
One of them's a non-negotiable, one of them is a negotiable, right?
Absolutely, yeah.
So.
Yeah, and that's another video for another day. So just to wrap things up real quick and put a nice little bow on it for you guys, it's okay, it is a good thing to have expectations and standards.
Yes. But maybe it's time to kind of do away with the list, especially if it's kind of like hindering your dating life. It's okay to ask yourself the question of, is this actually jeopardizing my holiness or not? Is it a place that I can actually grow? These are all good questions to ask, but maybe at the end of the day, it might be a good idea to just toss the list aside and free yourself to date.
Oh, that's me tossing the list with all the boxes away.
Yes.
I invite you to do the same.
If you are at this point in this video, leave a comment below of some things that maybe you've seen that are maybe negotiables that people have claimed to be non-negotiables. We're really curious what you guys have to say about that, and want to just have like a little discussion about it in the comment section. So leave a comment below.
And just a fun other thing before we let you go, check out our new pal, Mr. Benedict. Hello, YouTube.
Hopefully he hasn't been too noisy. He's actually been very good.
Yeah.
But yes, this is Benny. He just joined the fam. We're super excited. He's a little puppy, so he's a little rambunctious, but he's been very, very good. So maybe we'll have him enter the video every once in a while.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But please know that we're praying for you guys. Please continue to pray for us. I'm Tanner.
I'm Allie, and this is Benny.
Bye.